Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. On today's episode, we're getting ready to go out and experience a little fall fishing. And flutter spoons can be a tactic that works in the fall. It's kind of a limited window, and there's certain situations. Today, I'm going to tell you about what I look for and some of the modifications I make to my flutter spoon prior to getting out to do a little fall fishing with a flutter spoon. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to MFO, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. So, yeah, I'm getting ready to go out, do a little fall fishing, and I am going to tie on a flutter spoon because I know my history has told me that that can work in this time of year. Not sure it's going to work this week when I go out, but I've got one tied on. I'm going to be aware of the situation that I'm looking for, and if I see it, I'm going to use it. So let me tell you a little bit about what I'm looking for. We know that in the fall, the bait fish starts to group up. In fact, I've already been out on lakes like Lake Geneva and things where I'm seeing a lot of bait fish. Now, there's times when I'm scanning around looking and I'm seeing a ton of bait fish, not seeing a lot of bass with them. I can scan 10 different groups of bait fish, and then all of a sudden on the 10th one or the 11th one, oh, there's some bass underneath it. So that happens, but that's okay. That's what I'm at this point now. I'm just continuing to look for those bait fish. But when I see those situations where I see that bait fish and those bass hanging out underneath, that's the time I'm gonna throw a flutter spoon because I want to attract those bass that are just kind of hanging underneath that ball of bait fish and they're not really actively feeding. But if I can throw a flutter spoon through there, get that bait fish ball to kind of break up and that flutter spoon to fall through, that's what'll get those, especially smallmouth, triggered to go after that flutter spoon. So that's what I'm looking for in this scenario is those types of situations. Let me show you something that I do and quite honestly, I do this anytime I throw a flutter spoon, but I wanted to, this is a basic flutter spoon. Oh, and by the way, that does remind me of something. This is the time of year where I'm not throwing a big magnum flutter spoon. I'm just throwing kind of a basic, not a small one, but just what I would call a medium-sized flutter spoon. So this is one that I literally just took out of the package. Haven't done anything to it. It's just a normal flutter spoon with one treble hook on the back. Now the modifications that I make to my flutter spoon is that I will take the hook that is on the back of that flutter spoon that I just took out of the package, and I'm going to immediately transfer that one to the front, and that's going to just lay over the front of or the back of my flutter spoon. Now I'm going to then take a treble hook that's got some hair jigging kind of tail to it, and I'm going to put that one on the back. It's going to give me a little bit more flash coming off the bottom. Plus I have this hook now on the front. Now I always have that. That's where I'm tying. You can see that eye there. I've got a separate eye on. I'm not tying directly to the split ring. I've got a separate eye that I'm tying to. So my line tie goes to that. I've got a what I would call a stinger hook on the front, and then tail flashing on the back treble hook. What this does for me in a couple things. Number one is if I get a bite, okay, I've got that. This bait flops around a lot, and I just like with jerkbait fishing, if I can get that hook to flip around and get another set of hooks stuck into the fish on the top of the head or something like that while it's flopping around, that just increases my hookup percentage. But I will tell you, it's happened before where you get a fish here, he's got that bait, and that some of that silver and sparkle is sticking out of the fish's mouth, and you'll get another fish to grab it here, and you'll end up with a double, one on both sets of trebles. So that's why I tend to do that. It I I will say that there are times when this hook will kind of catch my line. Doesn't happen very often, but I kind of prefer to do that. So that's the modification that I make to my spoon. So the things that I wanted to point out, again, just to repeat, I'm using a medium-sized spoon. I'm not using what we call a magnum spoon. I'm not using the tiny, smaller spoons that I would use in very, very cold weather. Just a medium-sized spoon, taking the treble hook and putting a tail skirting on the bottom of it, and taking that other treble and putting it on the front as kind of a stinger hook setup. So when I've got that, now what I'm doing is I'm looking for those baitfish schools. Typically, we're looking, a prime area, and I'm thinking Lake Geneva here because that's the lake that I'm going, but you can apply this to any lake that you're going to. Any place where you've got fish that were out in deeper water and now they're starting to come around points, getting into the backs of coves and creeks and things like that. So you've got tapering types of points, and you're scanning around, and all of a sudden you see bait fish out there in maybe 18 feet of water or something like that. 12, even shallower, but typically I'm looking between 18, 12 feet of water, and you got those clouds of bait fish, and then you're seeing those dots and those marks underneath those clouds of bait fish. That's when I'm gonna throw this flutter spoon, let that kind of flutter through, and see if I can't trigger some of those bass that are hanging out underneath those bait fish to go after a flutter spoon. Guys, try this out the next time you're out there fishing in the fall. Use these tips, see if it doesn't help you catch a few more bass before Halloween. All right. All right, guys, we appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we will see you tomorrow for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.